Joe Biden gives the speech to end all speeches, or the speech to end his presidential career. We don't know which one's going to come out of this, but a lot of people, even on his side, are right now talking about the 25th. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on there. In other news, Afghanistan declares that they will offer amnesty and urges women to join their government. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. The Arizona audit could have a preliminary report possibly released this week. So we'll go over what some of that could mean and what that goes on with. And in a desperate bid to save his presidency, Joe Biden and the Department of Agriculture increased the amount of money you can get from SNAP. It's going to be all this and more. Hey. Do you trust the plan yet? I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and well, we got some stuff to get to today here. So it was quite the day yesterday. Everything changes within 24 hours on this news cycle right now, as Afghanistan is falling, as everything is going behind, and I don't know if Biden's going to make it out of this one here. Even Barack Obama turned his comments off on his Instagram. So we'll go over what that means. We'll go over the little bit of this speech. We'll look at some video. We'll watch some stuff. And hey, I've even got a Freedom Tunes cartoon for you guys today because I watched it yesterday and I laughed out loud. And we haven't heard from Seamus in quite a while, so we will check all that out and more over on Contemporary. Thanks for checking us out. And thanks for checking out The Porch Boys, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The Already Conservative, The Freckles and Brit Show, and The Daily Ignoramus. Thanks for checking all of those shows out. I got the email off finally, so we can possibly start moving in a direction where we can go and get this new project started. We were looking for a fall release, and we're hoping to still have something coming out in late fall, so watch for the website. It will be advertised on this channel, and of course, make sure you go and check out all those friends and help me support great creators. All right, looking in at your finance for the day, the Dow somehow, some way managed to close up yesterday, and I don't know how, but I'm sure we'll talk about it as we get in through IBD and CNBC here. But yeah, it dropped like a rock at the beginning, and it just had a, not a fast climb, but a slow climb coming back up to go back and close at 0.31% over. So we'll see what happens there. We'll see what the markets do with that. Your Bitcoin actually had a bit of a drop off yesterday, dropping from 47,000 to 46,861 US dollars and 30 US cents. So it's on sale again, so make sure you go and grab a little bit if you can. And your metal prices, copper dropped throughout the day almost universally. Bare bright copper, copper tubing number 2, insulated wire, Romex wire, anything that has copper, even brass dropped off a little bit yesterday, but your irons did come back up. And your aluminum also came up slightly, which means that I picked the wrong week to go and sell aluminum. I can tell you that right off the bat. So yeah, lead is up, aluminum rims, hard drives are up, motherboards are down. So that is what you're seeing on scrap metal for the day. All right, looking in at IBD. Dow futures slide 200 points as Home Depot, Walmart earnings beat. Let's get the monitors up here so we can see what's going on and make sure you guys aren't killing each other. Let's see. This is from Scott Latonin. Dow Jones futures, along with S&P 500 futures, and NASDAQ 100 futures were lower generally on Tuesday. The choppy stock market rally continues as Tesla stock dived on the news of a government investigation into Tesla's autopilot system, failing below a recent buy point. Dow Jones retailers, Home Depot, and Walmart topped earnings estimates early Tuesday. On Monday, the Dow Jones Industrial Average rallied 0.3%, while the S&P 500 also rose 0.3%. The Nasdaq cut losses to just 0.2%. Among the Dow Jones leaders, Apple rallied 1.35% on Monday, while Microsoft moved up 0.6% in today's stock market. Dow Jones retailers Home Depot and Walmart are near new buy points ahead of Tuesday morning's earnings results. Tesla dove 4.3% after the National Highway Safety Administration opened a formal investigation into Tesla's autopilot system. Tesla stock dropped below a recent buy point. Among the top stocks to watch and buy, Nvidia, RH, and Shopify are in or near buy zones. Nvidia, Microsoft, and Tesla are IBD leaderboard stocks. Apple is an IBD swing trader stock. Nvidia and Shopify featured in this week's stocks near a buy zone column. I do apologize if I start to trip over the words today. After the Red Net show last night, I decided, because my nose is running like crazy, that it would be a good idea to take an allergy pill, and yeah, I'm into the mushmouth stage a little bit, but the news stops for nobody, unfortunately, here, so we will power through this and see what we've got. On the futures, ahead of the stock market open on Tuesday, Dow futures lost 0.5% or 200 points versus fair value. That is one of the biggest drops that we have seen in recent months on the Dow. S&P 500 futures dropped 0.4% versus fair value. NASDAQ 100 futures moved down 0.35% versus fair value. Remember, trading in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. Among exchange-traded funds, the Innovator IBD 50 lost 1.2% Monday. NASDAQ 100 tracker Invesco QQQ Trust ETF inched higher Monday. Meanwhile, the SPDR S&P 500 ETF rose 0.25%. So I think that the markets are going to react to this speech. I think it was too early when he gave the speech yesterday, and the markets were getting ready to close, and people were making the last-minute buys. But I really think that this speech is going to be what buries a lot of this here, and we will see what happens with it as we go. Let's look in and see what CNBC has to say. Dow futures fall more than 200 points ahead of key retail sales data. Home Depot shares decline. From Pippa Stevens. U.S. stock futures fell in early morning trading on Tuesday after the Dow and S&P 500 closed at record highs. During regular trading on Monday, futures contracts tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 235 points or 0.7%. The S&P 500 futures shed 0.5%, and NASDAQ 100 futures lost 0.4%. Dow member Home Depot fell 3.5% in pre-market trading after reporting second quarter results, knocking futures. While quarterly earnings topped estimates, same-store sales rose 4.5% in the period, below the 5% consensus estimate of analysts polled by Street Account. U.S. same-store sales increased by just 3.4%. Walmart shares ebbed 1.2% lower in pre-market trading, even after second quarter earnings topped estimates. The retailer's cautious forecast may be the reason shares dipped. The company said it will earn between $1.30 and $1.40 a share this quarter. The consensus analyst estimate is $1.32, according to Street Account. The closely watched retail sales data will be released on Tuesday by the Census Bureau, with the Street expecting the reading to show a slowdown in July as the Delta variant spread. Economists surveyed by the Dow Jones are calling for a 0.3% decline for last month, after June's reading showed a surprise 0.6% jump. The S&P 500 move during Monday's session marked a milestone as the benchmark index doubled from its pandemic closing low on March 23, 2020. This marks the fastest bull market doubling since World War II, according to calculations from CNBC. Well, I guess we'll see what happens there and where it goes. I have concerns, especially seeing the 200-point drop right after the speech, but, as we see, whenever I have concerns, we see the thing shoot up like a fucking rocket the next day. So that's what we're seeing up on the finance. Let's get into some of the news of the day. The first thing that I want to do is I do want to share, because I laughed out loud at this one here. Freedom Tunes and their talk about the fact that Cuomo has resigned. Let's watch this and let's Let's give Seamus a little bit of support here.
I would like to see my family, please.
Oh, that's against the law.
My grandchildren.
He may have seemed like an innocent sweetheart, but now, after accusations of sexual misconduct, beloved governor and American hero, Governor Cuomo, has resigned. Greatest governor ever, man. Jim Eagle. Rest in peace. My one true love, Governor Cuomo. I love you. And who ate out at the restaurant? Where's my Game Boy? I'm not dead. I'm not a dead man over here. Shut up, man. Excuse me. Who am I? I'm not dead. I just resigned. Where am I? You know where I am, man? You're at my funeral, but I'm not dead. Will you shut up, man? I'm not even dead over here.
What do you think of Cuomo's resignation? Cuomo resigned. Leave a comment about it below. If you want to help us make more, please donate at patreon.com/freedomtunes. You know, and if enough donors ask for it, I'll make a full version of the Joe Biden singing at Cuomo's funeral song. Thank you so much.
Will you shut up, man? Oh, I like that. That actually got me laughing out loud. Come on, will you shut up, man? All right, something to lighten the mood before we got into some of the dark stuff here. I found that I enjoyed that. I want to do some more of that. A little bit more laughter in the opening, but you know, we can't always do that here because we do have a pretty hard time limit to get out of here by the end of the day. And, well, as we saw yesterday, sometimes they give us 45 tabs worth of news to go and talk about on one event. All right, let's get into the big news of the day, starting with this one here that was just dropping this morning. Like, if you go through the trend of Taliban announced amnesty, urged women to join the government on Twitter, they're not even showing stories about this yet. They're just showing general Afghanistan stories. So this is so new. This is breaking enough that we can talk about this for the first time here. But reading from NBC 5, Dallas-Fort Worth, Taliban announced amnesty, urged women to join the government. This is from Ahmad Seer, Tamim Akgar, Kathy Gannon, and John Gambrell. Hey, you sound like that guy that invented the phone that I like to use right now. Hey, are you John Gambrell? Hey, come on, man. The Taliban declared amnesty across Afghanistan and urged women to join the government Tuesday, seeking to convince a wary population that they have changed a day after the deadly chaos gripped the main airport as desperate crowds tried to flee their rule. Following a blitz across Afghanistan, they saw many cities fall to the insurgents without a fight. The Taliban have sought to portray themselves as a more moderate than when they imposed a brutal rule in the late 90s, but many Afghans remain skeptical. Older generations remember that the Taliban's ultra-conservative Islamic views, which included severe restrictions on women, as well as stonings, amputations, and public executions, before they were ousted by the U.S.-led invasion that followed the September 11th terror attacks. While there were no major reports of abuses or fighting, the capital of Kabul, as the Taliban now patrol its streets, many residents have stayed home and remain fearful after the insurgents' takeover saw prisons emptied and armories looted. Many women have expressed dread that the 2-decade Western experiment to expand their rights and remake Afghanistan would not survive the resurgent Taliban. Germany, meanwhile, halted development aid into Afghanistan over the Taliban takeover. Such aid is a crucial source of funding for the country, and the Taliban's efforts to project a milder version of themselves may be aimed at ensuring that the money continues to flow. Let's see if I can find that picture real quick here. But I mean, we looked at some of this here, and even looking at Afghanistan now versus what it was, because it was a pretty posh metropolitan area. Afghan. Yeah, that's the one that I wanted to see here. So, I mean, this is a picture that's been floating around social media for the last few hours here. And I mean, this shows, this is Kabul in the 70s here, with, women, no burqas, no face coverings, no head coverings, mini skirts. That was the big part of it was, well, the women in Kabul in the 60s and 70s were allowed to wear a miniskirt. And then, you see this now, and this is what it looks like in Afghanistan at this point. So, I mean, yeah, there's a difference. Even under the U.S. government rule in Kabul, you still see a lot of the burqas, a lot of the hijab, a lot of the face coverings as well. Well, it's Corona time, so we got the face covering no matter what. But, I mean, that is a stark difference even between... Because people were talking about the fact that women were leaving Afghanistan to go study in other places, or people were going to study in Afghanistan, in Kabul, in the 80s, where they were still dressing like this. And then we see what we see in the 90s and into 2001 under the Taliban rule. So I'm not sure where I fall on the Taliban rule and what that's going to mean. But let's keep reading here. The promises of amnesty from Inamullah Samagani, a member of the Taliban's Cultural Commission, were the first comments on how the Taliban might govern on a national level. His remarks remained vague, however, as the Taliban are still negotiating with political leaders of the country's fallen government and no formal handover deal has been announced. The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, with full dignity and honesty, has announced a complete amnesty for all Afghanistan, especially those who were with the opposition or supported the occupiers for years, and recently, he said. Other Taliban leaders have said they won't seek revenge on those who worked with the Afghan government or foreign countries, but some in Kabul allege that Taliban fighters have lists of people who cooperated with the government and are seeking them out. And hey, if the Taliban fighters don't have the lists, I'm sure a bunch of social media users on Twitter have that list. They made a list. Collaborators with the evil Orange Man government. Socialists on Twitter love to make lists. Just like socialists love to make lists. And if you wind yourself on a socialist list, you might be screwed. But that's what we see coming off of that. Samangani also described women as the main victims of the more than 40 years of crisis in Afghanistan. The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan doesn't want the women to be victims anymore. He said the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan is ready to provide women with environment to work and study and the presence of women in different government structures according to Islamic law in accordance with our cultural values. I can't do an Islamic accent. I tried for a half a second. I can't do it. And I also can't speak. The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan doesn't want the women to be victims anymore, he said. The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan is ready to provide women with environment to work and study and the presence of women in different government structures according to Islamic law and in accordance with our cultural values. That would be a marked departure from the last time the Taliban were in power, when women were largely confined to their homes. Samangani doesn't describe exactly what he meant by Islamic law, implying people already knew the rules. He added that all sides should join a government. So, yeah, they've got amnesty. They could have women in the government. I don't know how that would work on an ultra-conservative Taliban government, but I got a feeling we're about to find out. Because, especially if it goes northwards, and they let the women be in the government and let them run without the head coverings and everything else that they claim that they're going to do, the news media is going to completely forget about this, and we're never going to see the story again. But if they start oppressing, if they start pushing the women in their homes, hey, we need a propagandistic excuse to go back into Afghanistan and spend another 20 years there because Raytheon needs their motherfucking money. So I guess if it goes south, we'll find out about it. And if it doesn't go south, we will have no idea. Let's keep going. From ABC 7. Biden says he stands squarely behind Afghanistan decision. Coming to ABC 7 via the Dissociated Press by Zeke Miller, Jonathan Lemire, Josh Boak, of the Associated Press. Striking a defiant tone, President Biden said Monday that he stands squarely behind his decision to withdraw U.S. forces from Afghanistan and that the Afghan government's collapse was quicker than anticipated. Biden said he was faced with a choice between sticking to a previously negotiated agreement to withdraw U.S. troops this year or sending thousands more service members back to Afghanistan for a third decade of war. Biden said he will not repeat mistakes of the past and did not regret his decision to proceed with the withdrawal. I stand squarely behind my decision, man. We did the thing, you know, Biden said in a televised address to the nation at the time from the White House East Room. After 20 years, man, I've learned the hard way that there was never a good time to withdraw U.S. forces. Biden said he'd rather take criticism over the fallout in Afghanistan than pass the decision to a fifth president. A lot of people have been sitting here wondering if this means that Biden doesn't think he's going to be the president in 2025 and beyond. I actually don't read that out of what he said, because if we do go back in there, it's not going to be another short engagement like we were promised back in 2001. It's not going to be a 2 or 3 years to go find this Islamic leader, this Islamic leader. It will be another 20 years. So yes, he would be, no matter whether it be in 2025 or 2029, him passing the buck to another president. Biden described the images coming out of Afghanistan, especially at the airport in Kabul, where Afghans descended in hopes of fleeing the country, as gut-wrenching. Videos of Afghans clinging to the U.S. Air Force plane as it prepared to take off had circulated widely on the internet. But he did not admit any U.S. fault in how the drawdown was executed. He acknowledged that the Taliban takeover unfolded faster than had been anticipated. About a month ago, Biden batted away the notion of a rapid Taliban takeover. Biden said Monday the U.S. will continue to support the Afghan people, pushing for regional diplomacy and speak out for the rights of the Afghans. Senior U.S. military officials said the chaos at the airport at Kabul left 7 people dead on Monday, including some who fell from a departing American military transport jet. The officials spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to publicly discuss ongoing operations. Afghans rushed onto the tarmac as thousands tried to escape after the Taliban seized power. Some clung to the side of U.S. military plane before takeoff. It is a widely shared video that captured the desperation as America's 20-year war comes to a chaotic end. Or, as Jessica Green pointed out yesterday, possibly, it's all propaganda to make you think that they're that desperate to come off, and they shoved a department store mannequin off the plane instead as they were taken off. See? Hey, an Afghanistan person just jumped or fell off of here because he was trying to cling onto it so hard. Hey, let's stay in here forever, man. So that's what ABC7 has to say about Biden's speech. Let's read from NBC, but I got to refresh this a couple times. So they give me the option to continue without supporting this time. There it is. Biden defends Afghanistan policy amid mounting criticism of withdrawal. From Lauren Egan and Shannon Pettypiece. President Biden on Monday defended his administration's decision to continue with the U.S. military drawdown in Afghanistan, blaming the U.S.-backed Afghanistan government and military for allowing the Taliban to take over. Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. The Afghan military collapsed, sometimes without trying to fight, Biden said. If anything, the developments of the past week reinforce that ending U.S. military involvement in Afghanistan was now the right decision. Speaking to the American public from the White House, Biden said he stood firmly by his decision and argued that he was faced with a choice to either follow through with the drawdown or escalate the conflict into its third decade and ultimately sacrifice more American lives. I stand squarely behind my decision. It wasn't your decision, Joe. I'll go over that in just a second. After 20 years, I've learned the hard way that there was never a good time to withdraw U.S. forces. That's why we're still there. And I've never seen a military action. I've I've ever voted against. I love military action, man. Come on. The Taliban seized control of Afghan's capital on Sunday, following President Ashraf Ghani's departure from the country, bringing an abrupt end to the 20-year U.S. effort to restructure the Afghan government and its military. Within hours of the Taliban takeover, chaos erupted at Kabul's international airport as desperate Afghans raced to flee the country. A harrowing video of a department store mannequin showed Afghans storming the military side of the airport, clinging to a U.S. Air Force plane as it attempted to move down the tarmac. In the video, some people appeared to fall off to their death as the aircraft takes off. No, they were totally clinging to the landing gear. It totally wasn't all the way up yet. So, and realistically, and I've said this before, the Afghan people, I don't buy the fact that this was a completely violent takeover. That's where I want to go with this. I don't buy that. I really don't. Because it wouldn't have been this quick if it was a violent takeover. Now, yes, there were people that were being pulled out of their homes, but as I said on yesterday's Contemporary and yesterday's Red Ned show, both, a lot more of what we were seeing from this was the leadership of these states and provinces coming down, being told, hey, the president sucks balls, yo. Ashraf Ghani, he's a dick. He loves those American people. Hey, you want to join the Taliban? And the leader, Harold, realizing that there's been U.S. presence and U.S. equipment in his city for 20 years, looks up and says, sure, man. If you get these American people out of here, sure. Absolutely. Let's do this. Leaving nobody to fend for Ashraf Ghani. I don't think that he would have fled the country if he'd had more support on the ground. But he had no support on the ground. The Afghan government had no support. The military just kind of kneeled down and said, here, take our guns. We're done. We give up. And there was a level of propaganda to this. Now, yeah, one of the things that came out about this, and one of the things that was with this, is the fact that war has become a very, very dirty word to the GOP. Because they listen to their Lord and Savior and Messiah, Donald Trump, say, why are we paying for this? Why are we in this war forever? We got to end the war. We got to make deals. We got to get out of here because why are we here? We could be spending this money in other places, like a big, beautiful wall that Mexico's going to pay for, okay? Why are we here? Why are we doing this? And really, honestly, among MAGA Twitter especially, but also among MAGA in general, among MAGA Parlor, among MAGA Rumble, war is a dirty word at this point. We were coming into a situation very quickly that as long as the populists remain in power in the Republican Party, which it does seem like it could be like that for a very, very long time, Republicans were going to get the credit for ending the war and taking all the peace-loving hippies out of the Liberal Party and bringing them over to the conservative side, making them into MAGA GOP voters. Making them people who would vote for populists, not the globalist elites that want to stay in power for fucking ever. This is something that Joe Biden needed to do in order to make sure that the GOP didn't get credit for ending the war and continued to only have credit for starting the war. This was all optics. There was no other side to this other than optics. And yes, there was a level of optics that had to go along with President Trump doing the same thing. Because that was what Barack Obama ran on. Well, you know, my predecessor, W, he wrecked the economy with this thing going into Afghanistan and the Middle East, and we're just going, we got to pull it back. Because anybody with an R next to their name is evil, and they're fascistic. So make sure that for here and forever, anytime you go on L and you see somebody talking about America first, or that they're a Republican, or that they're anything other than a progressive Democrat that wants to have socialism, except I'm not a socialist. But anytime you see somebody that is not a progressive socialist Democrat, you make sure that you tell them that they're a fascist. Just like that evil George W. Bush. And I'm telling you, he's fascist because he's a Bush. And I'm going to end these wars. And then he never ended the wars. In fact, he expanded a lot of the military action over in places like Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq. even somewhat Iran. He expanded the military presence over there. So yes, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that Donald John Trump didn't do his bullshit for optics just the same. What I'm going to tell you is that this was a 100% optics-driven move to pull out now and also make sure that our goal date was September 11th, not May 1st, because not only do I need to get out of there, I can't do it on that what's that guy with the hot wife's name? I can't do it on the day that he wanted to get out of there. So, yeah, this is all optics. This is all bullshit too. All right, what else is on the stack here? This is interesting, by the way. The recount post audio from NPR, that is National Progressive Radio, giving you our communist ideals and spreading them around the world. Donate to us, National Progressive Radio. This is them talking to National Secretary Advisor. National Security, not Secretary. Wow, the allergy pills are really fucking kicking in here. National Security Advisor John Bolton to Donald Trump. Let's have a listen to what they had to say.
What kind of scenario was former President Trump striving for?
Well, I don't think he thought coherently about it, and I think if he had been reelected, he would have done essentially the same thing Biden did. Mike Pompeo, who joins in the responsibility for this policy, has tried to distinguish it. But in fact, Trump wanted out; he was going to get out. He didn't care whether the conditions that were included in the peace deal were met. Had he been reelected, I think he would have done the same thing Biden did.
What kind of scenario was former President Trump striving for?
Well, I don't think he thought coherently about it, and I think if he had been reelected, he would have done essentially the same thing Biden did. Mike Pompeo, who joins in the responsibility for this policy, has tried to distinguish it. But in fact, Trump wanted out; he was going to get out. He didn't care whether the conditions that were included in the peace deal were met. Had he been reelected, I think he would have done the same thing Biden did.
What kind of scenario was former President Trump striving for?
Well, I don't think he thought coherently about it, and I think if he had been reelected, he would have done essentially the same thing Biden did. Mike Pompeo, who joins in the responsibility for this policy, has tried to distinguish it. But in fact, Trump wanted out; he was going to get out. He didn't care whether the conditions that were included in the peace deal were met. Had he been reelected?
Yeah, I let that go in loop. That's my fault. I saw that. But yeah, I mean, this is it. This John Bolton says, "Oh well, if Donald would have done it, then it would have been worse." Well, possibly. I'm actually going to agree with that dumb fucking mustache for just a second. Now, and I mentioned this yesterday too. One of the problems, and this goes along with Asian diplomacy. One of the problems that we're seeing now was the fact that the Taliban was able to, as I said in the last article, they were able to walk up to the mansions of the governors of these various provinces across Afghanistan and say, "Hey, here's a cigar, join my cause." And for the most part have the government apparatus of a lot of these provinces just hand over and say, "Okay, cool. You want to play golf later?" They were able to do a lot of that. Whereas under the Trump withdrawal, they wouldn't have had the propaganda because the U.S. government would have held up to their end of the deal. And Ron and Jessica both pointed out yesterday that, I mean, the U.S. government never holds up their end of the deal. So I do think that coming in and making this deal and having the Taliban sign on to it was deliberate because their thought process was they would be able to go out and say, "Hey, the U.S. has never held up their end of the deal in the history of the United States. So, join my cause, buy war bonds." There's a level of that, but had Don, because, as a businessman, I do think that Don would have at least made a more concerted effort to hold to the May 1st deadline. That if we would have pulled out of the May 1st deadline, then yes, in order for them to go take all this swath of land, I think the Taliban was going to take the land. But the difference between the Biden pullout and the Trump pullout is there would have probably been a lot more violence involved. They can't use the propaganda. They can't come out and say, Oh, well, the evil U.S. They didn't hold up their end of the bargain. And their bargain sucked because the Taliban themselves signed on to that bargain. Then that would be them going back on their word if they went in and tried to, come out and rally against the government. Which, I don't trust them not to do that. I absolutely, they're going to fucking do that. But I do think that this would have been more bloodshed, and they still would have eventually taken over the area. It just would have been in a lot different fashion than what we're seeing right now. But they also wouldn't have had the MRAPs, the Barretts, and all the other good fun drone munition and ground munition and arms munition. So, yeah, that's what we see coming off of that. Let's grab one from Fox News. Lindsey Graham slams Biden Afghanistan speech. No one to blame here but himself, sugar. From Michael Lee. Senator Lindsey Graham took aim at President Biden after the president's address to the nation Monday, insisting that Biden take more responsibility for the situation in Afghanistan. President Biden chose a dangerous and dishonorable path in Afghanistan, sugar, and he had no one to blame for this debacle but himself, Graham said in a statement on Biden's speech. With today's speech, President Biden reinforced the view that he still does not understand the war on terror, on how to protect America from the threat of radical Islam, baby. He continued, that speech was a pathetic attempt to shift the blame and an unnerving analysis of the situation that he, and he alone, created. Contrary to what he may say or think, President Biden has not ended the war in Afghanistan. He is simply creating a new chapter, one that will be filled by Taliban thugs and Al-Qaeda murders. Ooh, that's some scary stuff, man. Biden spent much of the speech pinning the blame for the deteriorating security situation in Afghanistan on others, most notably the Afghan military and the government. We gave them every chance to determine their own future, Biden said of the Afghan military. What we could not provide them was the will to fight for that future. The president insisted that he stands by his decision to have U.S. forces leave the country, arguing that no more U.S. troops should die in the conflict if those who live there aren't willing to make the same sacrifice. It wasn't your decision to leave the country. I want to be very clear about that. It was not Biden's decision to leave the country. And had this been a second-term Hillary presidency, not only would we still be there right now to this day, even though the fact it's only 4 days later than what it was, right now to this day we would still be there. In fact, on a probably increased military presence, because war has become a dirty word with the GOP, especially among the populists. And we're starting to see more and more body bags, and the fact that, yes, we have people going over there to fight in Afghanistan that were not alive when we first went in there, that had not been born yet when we first went in there. Okay, that's enough of you. You can sit in timeout for 10 minutes. Come back and think about what you've done. You can be back in 10 minutes. We don't name call here. And by the way, that's just for you. American troops cannot and should not be fighting a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves, Biden said. But Biden did acknowledge that the speed at which the situation unfolded did catch his administration off guard. Truth is, man, this did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated, Biden admitted. But that acknowledgement was not enough for Graham, who slammed the president for making the decision to pull troops out to begin with. But then about the decision, sugar, President Biden is standing by to allow the slaughter of thousands of Afghans who have faithfully stood by America's side. He's standing by to allow the rise of Al-Qaeda sugar in collaboration with the Taliban to threaten America, Graham said. President Biden made these decisions against sound military advice, and everything he has warned about is now coming true. The situation we see today is bad for getting worse. I fear the worst is still to come, he added. But, yeah, that's where Lindsey Graham is. And Lindsey Graham would love for us to go back over there and stay over there forever because he is still a part of the old guard GOP. He is still part of that old guard GOP that comes out and says, we have to stay in the Middle East forever because we have to do whatever it is that our great and glorious leader HW told us that we needed to do. That fucking warmongering prick as well. But for the most part, Lindsey Graham is going to go wherever it is that is going to give him the most support and lets him get reelected because he is a grifting asshole. And he's also going to go anywhere else that he can go and pretend to be a sugar fairy. Let's keep going. From the Hill. Nicole Wallace. 95% of Americans will agree with Biden's speech on Afghanistan. I don't know what part of Twitter you were on, Nicole Wallace, but I mean, even Democrats, even Celiza, and we're going to be talking about this way later on, by the way. Even Celiza over at CNN stood against what Biden had to say. Even Celiza is talking about the crisis of competence with Joe Biden. When you have lost CNN as a Democrat, you have lost the world. But let's see what Nicole Wallace has to say. From Dominic Mastrangelo. MSDNC host Nicole Wallace predicted Joe Biden's speech on the ballooning crisis in Afghanistan will be more well received among the American public than it will be by the Washington, D.C. press corps. 95% of the American people will agree with everything he just said, Wallace said shortly after Biden's speech ended on Monday. 95% of the press covering the White House will disagree. During his remarks from the White House East Room, Biden doubled down on his decision to pull troops from Afghanistan, saying he would not pass the country's longest war on to another American president. I will not mislead the American people by claiming just a little more time in Afghanistan will make the difference. Nor will I shrink away from my share of responsibility for where we are today and how we must move forward from here, he said. Jill, what's my title? Oh, thank you. I'm the President of the United States of America, and the buck stops with me. Let's listen to what Nicole had to say.
95% of the American people will agree with everything he just said. 95% of the press covering this White House will disagree. And for an American president to finally be completely aligned with such an overwhelming majority of what the American people think about Afghanistan is probably a tremendous relief to the American people. 95% of the American people will agree with everything he just said. 95% of the press covering this White House will disagree. And for an American president to finally be completely aligned with such an overwhelming majority of what the American people think about Afghanistan is probably a tremendous relief to the American people.
The Taliban overtook Afghanistan's capital, city of Kabul, on Sunday after a quick rise following Biden's decision to remove U.S. troops from the region, something he has supported doing since his time as vice president. The ensuing panic has sent thousands of Afghans into a state of fear, with hundreds descending onto the airport in Kabul hoping to flee the country. Biden said on Saturday the U.S. would send 1,000 additional troops to the area to help evacuate U.S. personnel on the ground and vowed to retaliate if the Taliban interfered with the extraction effort. Well, I guess we'll see what happens with that, but I got a feeling we're sticking around there for quite a bit longer. All right, from the Daily Wire, Biden returns to Camp David after White House speech on Afghanistan. From Charlotte, Pence bond. Yeah, we knew that there weren't going to be any questions answered by that. Everybody knew that there weren't going to be any questions answered from that. I knew from the moment that I heard him say that he was going to give up and give a speech that he wasn't going to give questions. In fact, I know a lot of people were pointing out the fact that it was probably a pre-recorded speech, which I don't think it was, but I do think that, you can't get out in front of the press room and not answer questions and have people wonder what the fuck is going on. But the press corps is quite eager to cover his poopy ass. The White House announced that President Biden was heading back to Camp David after he delivered a speech at the White House on Monday discussing the situation in Afghanistan. Per several reports, the White House told the press that Biden would depart Washington, D.C. en route to Camp David at 4:50 p.m. on Monday. There is the update right there. After the president will travel to Camp David, the departure from Fort Leslie J. McNair will be covered by the in-town travel pool. Several commentators on Twitter panned the president's decision. Stephen Miller tweeted, "I'm sorry, what?" Meghan McCain tweeted, "I don't understand." On CNN's The Lead with Jake Tapper, correspondent Jeff Zeleny commented that the decision for Biden to he commented on the decision for Biden to return to Camp David. Zeleny said, "Optics, as you know, Jake, are very important to any president, so the president's going back to Camp David. Very important optically as well. They're trying to show that they have this crisis under control. We'll see, of course, if he comes back to the White House and has to speak again. They do not have this situation under control. They do not, and they know it." The president has been criticized across the board for his response to the situation in Afghanistan, as the Daily Wire reported. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell slammed President Biden Sunday after the Afghan government collapsed as the U.S. evacuated its forces from the country. McConnell said the ongoing chaos in Afghanistan is the embarrassment of a superpower laid low. Everybody saw this coming except the president, who publicly and confidently dismissed these threats just a few weeks ago. The strategic, humanitarian, and moral consequences of this self-inflicted wound will hurt our country and distract from other challenges for years to come, McConnell stated. Here is RNC Research showing a video of him bolting for the fucking door as soon as he's done with his speech.
May God protect our troops, our diplomats, and all brave Americans serving in harm's way.
Mr. President, what do you make of the Afghans clinging to the aircraft? Mic drop out. All right, from the Blaze, Glenn Beck's piece of shit website. Ex-Obama advisor says Biden should fire his national security advisor over botched Afghanistan withdrawal. From Alex Nitzberg. As the U.S. withdraws from Afghanistan and the world witnesses the Taliban swiftly taking control of that country, the Biden admin is facing criticism. Brett Bruen, who served as Director of Global Engagement at the Obama White House, wrote in an opinion piece that the National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan should be fired. The disaster that unfolded in Afghanistan is illustrative of other major issues at the White House. The people, plans, and processes the president has put them in place to keep America safe are not working, Bruen declared. He contended that Sullivan and others connected with the bungled U.S. military withdrawal should be fired. Let's read. Yes, we were always going to pull out. It was a question of how and when. Both of these were decisions that Sullivan had to use his role to carefully guide. Unfortunately, it seems he allowed the president's push for an end to our involvement in the country ahead of September 11th to drive the American timeline. That was a catastrophic error. Our people were unprepared. We failed to get them out of harm's way. The Afghan government and military clearly were not ready either. President Biden needs to fire his national security advisor and several other senior leaders who oversaw the botched execution of our withdrawal from Afghanistan. He has to restructure how and with whom he is making major foreign policy decisions, allowing for more input from career experts. Ryan Crocker, who has previously served as the ambassador to several countries, including Afghanistan, expressed concern about President Biden's leadership capability. I'm left with some grave questions in my mind about his ability to lead our nation as Commander-in-Chief, Crocker said, according to the Spokesman Review, to have read this so wrong, or even worse, to have understood that it was likely to happen and not care. Many Republican lawmakers have levied criticism against Biden. The issue isn't that we left, Senator Marco Rubio tweeted. The issue is how we left, on a timetable certain to result in chaos without a plan in place to prevent the return and resurgence of Al-Qaeda. The Taliban takeover in Afghanistan is shameful, a sincere tragedy, and a complete leadership failure by this president. And it was all entirely avoidable, Republican Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa said in a statement. Joni Ernst is another one who wants to stay in there forever, by the way. This mishandled and haphazard withdrawal executed by this president caused so much of the collapse and panic we are witnessing and is an international embarrassment and a black eye for our country that will pull more Americans and allies in harm's way while emboldening our adversaries. So that's what we're seeing coming out of that. And yeah, there is that going on too. So that's what we see coming up out of there. Let's grab one from Fox. Obama shuts off Instagram comments amid Afghanistan collapse. From Jessica Chasmer. Commenting on former President Obama's Instagram page was briefly suspended Monday morning as commenters urged the former president to do something about the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan. What exactly is he going to do, by the way? I realize this is the messiah of the progressive left, and most of them have altars to this man. Most of them worship to these altars and pray for peace and pray to Obama for Biden to pull this off and keep the evil orange man out of the White House. But what is he going to do? Seriously? Obama has yet to issue a public statement on the rapidly declining situation in Afghanistan as thousands of people try to flee the country that fell to Taliban rule in a matter of days. Good. Keep his fucking mouth shut. He doesn't need to make a statement. He hasn't been president for 4 years. There's no need to make that statement, President Obama. Stay in Martha's Vineyard. Go play golf a few more times. Go hang out with people not socially distanced. Go without a mask. And make anybody who takes a photo of you without the mask, not socially distancing, make them delete their photos. Just like you always fucking do. Keep your dumb fucking mouth shut. Obama's Instagram post said, comments on this post have been limited. For roughly 2 hours Monday morning, his recent post, a video Thursday touting his all-on-the-line redistricting campaign, garnered 885 comments before it was shut down on Monday. Afghanistan needs your help. Please help Afghanistan, one commenter wrote. The blood of the Afghan people is on the hands of those who have remained silent in the face of oppression and have made friends with the Taliban, wrote another. History will not forget your crime. What did we accomplish in Afghanistan if we turn tail and run now? Asked another. They need us. That's not the American way. We do not surrender and run. We stay and fight. And until the issues are resolved, which is true independence. Commenters posted the hashtags Help Afghanistan. Afghanistan is bleeding, among others, before being cut off. The commenting on former First Lady Michelle Obama's Instagram page was also turned off during the same period of time. What the hell is she going to do? Seriously. What do you expect these people to do? Now, we could go into the conspiracy theory as to whether or not there's the global Nostra, the global mafia, and Barack Obama's at the head of it. He's the one pulling the strings, or he's having his strings pulled by George Soros. We could go down that conspiracy theory. But under the mainlined idea of what these people actually are, what the fuck can either of them do? Especially Michelle. They're not in power anymore. Their terms ended. There's nothing that either of these people can do. And by the way, if they do try to go do something, they're in violation of the Logan Act. Yeah. Yeah, that thing that nobody's ever been prosecuted for, yeah, they're in violation of that. Dumb fucks. All right, from archive.today of USA Today, ex-Obama advisor, why Biden must fire his national security advisor for Afghanistan failure. We talked about this already. We talked about this from Beck's fucking website. I don't know why I put that up twice, but we're going to skip that. But we'll save this one for the Red Net Show on Monday. Lauren Boebert was briefly trending yesterday. Lauren Boebert is one of 16 members of Congress who voted last month against giving visas to Afghans who helped the U.S. Which I'm actually in support of that too, by the way. Especially given the fact that a lot of them chose this future. And they didn't fight. They just rolled over for the Taliban. But we also do have the idea that a lot of these people are currently right now looking for a reason to have another refugee crisis. I saw that one coming from a mile away. Let's listen to this very briefly.
We did it, Joe.
Jesus, sorry for the ear aids. Wow. That hurt me. And as Lauren Boebert tweets out with this, at least they won't have to read mean tweets. Thank you, Lauren Boebert. You're also a plant. From the Hill. Senate GOP campaign chairman floats 25th Amendment probe against Biden, from Jordan Carney. Senator Rick Scott, who chairs the Senate GOP campaign arm, is raising the prospect of using the 25th Amendment to remove President Biden from office, calling for a congressional investigation into his handling of Afghanistan. After the disastrous events in Afghanistan, we must confront a serious question. Is Joe Biden capable of discharging his duties of his office, or has the time come to exercise the provisions of the 25th Amendment? Scott tweeted on Monday. Rick Scott quote tweeted himself saying, "Inflation is raising, the debt ceiling expired, and U.S. debt is headed to $45 trillion. Kabul is falling to the Taliban and encounters the Biden border crisis, just hit a 20-year high. Democrats control the House, Senate, and White House. What in the world is Joe Biden doing?" The idea of removing Biden from office through the 25th Amendment, which allows the vice president and a majority of the cabinet or a group established by Congress to remove a president by declaring them unfit for office, is a non-starter. But it marks the latest attempt by former President Trump and some of his closest allies to raise questions about Biden's mental fitness. Other Republicans have warned that personal attacks against Biden's risk backfiring. Democrats and some Republicans called for Trump to be removed from office using the 25th Amendment. No. A lot of people called for that after a mob of his supporters breached. No, it was before the Selfie Fest. Fuck you. No, they're going to try and retcon history and say, no, we never said 25th Amendment until the insurrection. Oh my God. No, fuck you. You have been saying 25th Amendment since before January 20th, 2017. You've been saying 25th Amendment now since Election Day. So no, you don't get to pull that bullshit. The internet is forever, people. I hope you know that. Anytime he did something outside of the ordinary, anytime he made a tweet, when he fell asleep while he was trying to write press coverage and wrote press covfefe, you tried to pull the 25th Amendment. So don't come back here and say, no, it was only after the Selfie Fest. Because you're a bullshit liar at that point, fucking Hill. Scott, as part of that process, supported a challenge to Pennsylvania's election results. He also voted, along with most GOP senators, against convicting Trump of inciting a selfie fest during an impeachment trial that took place after the former president left office. Scott appears to be the first GOP senator to float removing Biden from office by the 25th Amendment over his handling of Afghanistan, but Rep. Ronnie Jackson, who previously made a similar push, revived his call on Monday, tweeting that something must be done, and Trump's son, Don Jr., tweeted a criticism of Biden's upcoming speech with the hashtag 25th Amendment. But Republicans are launching a fierce criticism against Biden over his handling of Afghanistan, where a chaotic scene dominating headlines after the Taliban entered and recaptured Kabul. Biden is returning to Washington, D.C. on Monday and is expected to address the nation on Monday afternoon. So this article was written before the speech came back, before he came out and gave the speech we just watched, or at least him running off to the side at this point. But it is, we do need to start thinking about the 25th Amendment on this one. The guy doesn't know where he is. He was honk-honked in there, but, we can have that conversation another day. He doesn't know where he is. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say impeach Biden, impeach Kamala, impeach Pelosi, because that's what the big fear is right now, that if we go down this path, we're going to get President Pelosi. That's not what I'm seeing off of this. But the guy has clear dementia at this point. And he was clearly installed into that office to make sure that he had executive privilege until the day that he died, so he can never spill the beans about who all had their hands in the cookie jar in the Hunter situation, because it was not just him. There were several other people in the Democratic coalition that had their hands in that Hunter Biden cookie jar with the Ukrainian gas company. The writing is on the wall. But this is also the person who has the nuclear codes and has unilateral authority to make military decisions, with or without Congress's approval, thanks to Congress ceding most of that ability to the presidency after 9/11. Is this really the person that you want running and holding the nuclear football? And I will say that, even at this point, and it makes me shudder to think about this, that even Kamala would make a better president and a better commander-in-chief at this point. Not because I think she would actually do better at the job, but she at least has the cognitive ability that we can hold her accountable for it. That we can come out and say, yes, you were in control of your mental faculties when you made this stupid fucking decision. Not, oh, well, he's just a kindly old grandpa, and we don't have to hold him to account for everything else here. No, when you have the full cognitive ability, we can hold you accountable for it. And we need to. Biden doesn't have full mental cognitive ability. And yes, some people can come back and dismiss this as, oh, well, he was being cute and he thought he was doing what he thought was right, which is a scary thought, when that's the person who has the nuclear codes, the nuclear football. But yes, they're going to, it's a non-starter because they don't need this. And even this one coming here from the Examiner. Republicans float far-fetched 25th Amendment plan to oust Biden over Kabul debacle. Which we're not going to read too far into this because I don't consider the Washington Examiner to be a credible source because they aren't green check verified. But I wanted to just point out the fact that, yes, they're coming out here, and even the Washington Examiner is calling this a far-fetched 25th Amendment plan. Some Republicans are floating an improbable use of the Constitution's 25th Amendment to remove President Biden from office in the wake of the U.S. chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan amid a Taliban takeover of the country's capital of Kabul over the weekend. After the disastrous events in Afghanistan, we must confront a serious question. Is Joe Biden capable of discharging the duties of his office, or has the time come to exercise the provisions of the 25th Amendment, Florida Republican Senator Rick Scott tweeted on Monday. And yes, there's an argument to be made. There's even, at this point, an argument to be made that Pelosi would make a better president than the two of them. Not, once again, because she has a better agenda, that she has the better abilities, but she can't argue cognitive decline like Biden can. We can hold her accountable for her actions and say, you knew full well what you were doing. You are a sociopath and a psychopath. And we will vote you out in 2024. So that's what we're seeing from that. And yeah, as I said at the top of the show, Even Syriza, when you have lost CNN as a Democratic politician, you have lost the world, and even CNN at this point. The point with Chris Syriza, an analysis from Chris Syriza. Joe Biden is facing a crisis of competence. Let's read. At the heart of Joe Biden's 2020 presidential campaign was a single word: competence. After 4 years of Donald Trump's incompetence in, well, everything, the Biden argument was that the country badly needed a steady hand at the tiller. Someone who had been there and done that. Someone who didn't need training to do the job. Someone who was expected, or exactly the opposite of the guy currently in office. And it worked. Rather than see Biden's age, he's 78, as a negative, plenty of voters believed his decades of experience were what the country needed in the post-Trump era. Knowing how the federal bureaucracy worked mattered. So did having good relations with world leaders and having seen everything there was to see on both the domestic and foreign policy fronts. 7 months into his first term, however, Biden is faced with nothing short of a crisis of that competence beset on a number of fronts with developments that it appears all of his experience and know-how didn't prevent. The glaring example is, of course, the rapid takeover of Afghanistan by the Taliban in the wake of Biden's decision to pull American troops out of the country. That wasn't his decision. In announcing the end of the American military commitment in Afghanistan just over a month ago, Biden had proclaimed, "There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of an embassy in the United States in Afghanistan." Except that over the weekend, images were beamed back to the U.S. of helicopters airlifting people from the parking lot of the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. And on Monday morning, there was even more devastating images, Afghans clinging to an American plane as it took off from the country. The overwhelming message: the situation was totally and completely out of control, and neither Biden nor his top policy advisor could stop it. Remember back in May, when Biden announced the CDC had said vaccinated people no longer need to wear masks indoors, a development described as a great milestone. Just 2 months later, however, Biden was forced to reverse himself amid a surge in cases caused by the Delta variant. And while Biden is congratulating himself and the country this spring on the number of people who had been vaccinated against the pinko fucking pox, his admin came up short of its off-stated goal of 70% of eligible adults with at least one shot of the vaccine by July 4th. Yes, CNN has turned on the Biden admin. From the Daily Wire, this is an op-ed from Ian Howarth. No matter the timing, withdrawing from Afghanistan was wrong. I'm going to call bullshit on this right away and say no. We needed to be out of there right away. President Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan has been an unmitigated disaster. In fact, even the legacy media have accepted the spotlight falls heavily on the Biden admin. With Biden emerging from hiding in Camp David and the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki taking the worst timed vacation in history, the blame is falling squarely at the feet of the Democratic Party for the humanitarian nightmare unfolding in Afghanistan, as it should. But there is a wider question here, beyond the demonstrable ineptitude of Biden's foreign policy. Why did this happen? Many have pointed out that such events were inevitable. I am one of them. Many have pointed out that withdrawal was a policy pushed by both the Trump and Biden admin. I am one of them. Many have argued that the inevitable nature of this outcome of this bipartisan policy means that while we can criticize how this withdrawal was carried out, the underlying goal was sound. I am not one of them. The central problem when it comes to Afghanistan is that too many people, many of them conservatives, are misrepresented both on the reality of human nature and the range of choices we face in the context of this reality. We never should have been there in the first place. They should defend themselves. We are not imperial force. Interventionists are wrong. This was always going to happen when we left. These views and many others are based on the false premise that we were facing a choice between withdrawing now and withdrawing later, built on the false assumption that the war in Afghanistan was wrong in the first place. Whether we made through ignorance, naivety, or cynicism, these views are incorrect. First, the war in Afghanistan was a correct decision. We were attacked by terrorists, harbored and protected by the Taliban in Afghanistan. Regardless of whether you believe the subsequent military actions or strategies were effective or necessary, the initial decision to strike back was unquestionably valid following 9/11. Second, the leave now or leave later proposition is a false binary. There is another choice being ignored. Don't withdraw. Instead, maintain a long-term specialized military force in any and all regions in which the undermining of terrorist activity protects all U.S. civilians. Bullshit. Bullshit. I'm sorry, Ian Haworth, and I've read a lot of your articles before, but this is full unmitigated bullshit. We should have never been there in the first place. There was no reason to be there. Bin Laden wound up being in Pakistan, and that's if you believe that bullshit story. He wasn't in Afghanistan. Afghanistan had nothing to do with this. Nothing. Not a goddamn thing to do with this. Except for the fact that they had poppy and we needed fentanyl and opium and heroin and other opiates for painkillers so we could get our military people that we're sending over there hooked on fucking OxyContin. No, we didn't need to be there. If you want to make the argument that we needed to make a strike, okay, then make a strike. Don't stay there until the end of fucking time. There's no reason for that. None. We lost this because we were incompetent on the world stage. And this is going to have far-reaching effects for the U.S. for the rest of time to come. Because we've lost Vietnam and Afghanistan at this point. So no, we didn't need to stay there forever. And you're a warmongering prick just like the rest of the fucking Bushites. Alright, we got another one from NBC. Female mayor in Afghanistan says she's waiting for Taliban to come and kill me. From Antonio Planas. One of Afghanistan's first female mayors said Sunday that she is waiting for the Taliban to come and kill her as the Islamic militants reach the capital, Kabul. I am sitting here waiting for them to come. There's no one to help me or my family. I'm just sitting with them and my husband, and they will come for people like me and kill me. Zarifa Ghaffari, the mayor of Maidan Shar, told the British newspaper, I can't leave my family, and anyway, where would I go? Ghaffari, 27, is Afghanistan's youngest mayor and the first woman to hold the office in Maidan Shar in Wardak province. The newspaper reported that only 3 weeks ago, Ghaffari said there was hope for our country. Younger people are aware of what's happening. They have social media. They communicate. I think they will continue fighting for progress and our rights. I think there's a future for this country, Ghaffari said. Ghaffari was appointed in the summer of 2018 by President Ashraf Ghani. The New York Times, a former newspaper, reported, although there have been female governors and mayors before in Afghanistan, the Times reported she is one of the few women to have ever held a government job in the very conservative city of Maidan Shar. As the Taliban become resurgent, Ghaffari was given the job and the relative safety of the defense ministry in Kabul, with responsibility for the welfare of soldiers and civilians injured in terrorist attacks, I reported. So, she thinks that they're going to come back and kill her at this point, and I don't know if they're going to. That will depend on what happens with this article we read up at the top, where they're announcing amnesty and welcome women to join the government. But I guess we'll see what's happening. From Insider, the DoD could be housing 30,000 Afghan refugees in locations like Fort McCoy in Wisconsin and Fort Bliss in Texas, according to a report from Cheryl Tett. The U.S. Department of Defense could be planning to make room for some 30,000 Afghan refugees at U.S. Army garrisons like Fort Bliss in Texas and Fort McCoy in Wisconsin, which I drive by quite often. I know where McCoy is. This is according to a report from Jackie Heinrich, a Fox News White House correspondent. Heinrich cited documents obtained from an unnamed source at the Department of Defense, which she says show the U.S. plans to bring 30,000 Afghans to the U.S. in the immediate future. The incoming Afghans will be those who applied for special immigrant visas. These visas are given to those employed by or on behalf of the U.S. government. This includes individuals who are interpreters or translators for the U.S. military, many of whom could be in immediate danger following the Taliban's impending takeover of the country. We want to have the capacity to get up to several thousand Afghans immediately and want to be prepared for the potential of tens of thousands, said Pentagon spokesman John Kirby to Heinrich. Fort Bliss and McCoy have the capability right now. What's advantageous is, with a bit of work, this could increase in short order. Kirby told Heinrich SIV applicants will be evacuated along with U.S. citizens. Once we get more airlifted out of Kabul, we're going to put as many people on those planes as we can. There will be a mix, not just American citizens, but perhaps some Afghan SIV applicants as well, Kirby told Heinrich. We're going to focus on getting people out of the country, then sorting it out at the next stop. It's not going to be just Americans first, then SIV applicants. CNN reported earlier on August 15th that, however, that the U.S. is curtailing evacuation flights to Americans to prioritize the evacuation of American citizens. On its report, CNN said that the last flight currently planned for SIV applicants and their families had already left Afghanistan to transport refugees to Fort Lee in Virginia. Well, as long as I can still get a bacon on my Butterburger from Culver's, and they sign the contract. Now, if they didn't sign a contract, I would be wary of giving this because we will see another refugee and humanitarian crisis over in this country that I don't think we're ready to see in this divided time. But if they did sign a contract, then we have to honor the contract. So that will depend on an individual basis whether or not there was a contract involved or whether or not there was an agreement involved. But right now I'm sitting back and looking at this and saying, no, this is just another attempt for a refugee crisis. All right, that's all that I have for Afghanistan. Where are we at? An hour and 19 minutes just talking about Afghanistan. I'm actually not that surprised, but that's what we see coming off of that. Let's move on and talk about AZ Central. Arizona audit update. Arizona audit preliminary report. Other documents possibly released this week. From Jen Fifield, Richard Rollis, and Brian Snyder. This article has no content. Okay. Well, we could see the Arizona audit coming up this week because the Senate has released preliminary reports that they are done and they're ready to come out and see what it is. Now, I got this because I saw somebody tweet out the fact that Arizona needs to recall its electors and decertify its election now, which I don't know what they think this is going to do, but yes, we could be seeing this as early as this week. So we'll see what happens there. From CNN, Governor Gavin Newsom sharpens message as Larry Elder poses threat in recall race. From Mae Reston and Kyung La. As he hit the campaign trail this weekend to fight the Republican-led effort to oust him, California Governor Gavin Newsom leaned into the microphone with a message for all the disengaged Democrats who might be inclined to ignore the September 14th recall election. Though we defeated Trump, we didn't defeat Trumpism. Trumpism is still alive and well, even here in the state of California, Newsom said, standing before tables full of phone banking volunteers at Hecho and Mexico restaurant. If you don't believe me, just consider the likely person to enter an oath of office to enter in our governor's office in just a matter of weeks if we don't reject this recall. He then asked them to imagine the fate of his most urgent priorities if he is replaced by Larry Elder, the conservative talk radio host who quickly became his most formidable GOP opponent after a late entry into the race. Newsom ticked through an array of Elder positions that stand in direct contradiction to the views of the majority of Californians, the Republicans' opposition to a minimum wage and the assault weapons ban, his past skepticism of the climate crisis, and his support for an offshore drilling, and Elder's eye-popping observation on gender in a 2000 column in Capitalism magazine, in which he wrote that women know less than men about political issues, economics, and current events. Based. Don't think for a second, man, that this recall is not about you, Newsom warned, and the supporters assembled beneath rows of rustling red, green, and white flags on the patio. It's about each and every one of us and the values we hold dear, man. The first vote-by-mail ballots, which will be delivered to every registered voter in the state, begin going out this week. For months, the outcome of the September 14th recall seemed like a foregone conclusion in a state that elected 2 years ago with 62% of the vote, a place where the simple math overwhelmingly favors registered Democrats who outnumber Republicans by nearly 2-1. As the pandemic has raged on, there have been feverish enthusiasm with the Republican minority to recall Newsom, but often rank-and-file GOP voters could not recall the name of a single GOP candidate running to replace him during interviews with CNN across the state. That changed when Elder entered the race in July, snapping the slumbering contest into sharp focus. Though Elder is not a household name in California, he has been well known and widely admired for decades in the conservative circles. A charismatic and frequent presence on television as well as talk radio in a field of GOP candidates who failed to spark excitement among voters, his late entry infused a jolt of electricity into the recall race. Well, Gavin appears that he may be screwed if the election is free and fair as it goes, because Elder is only trailing him by 2 points at this point. But of course, they also have the opportunity to honk the election and make sure that Gavin Newsom still gets in. All right, from CBS. More than 3,000 fake vaccine cards from China seized by Customs and Border Patrol officers at one port. From Caitlin O'Kane. Okay, guys, I told you that you should never make your own vaccine card. I never said that you should never import one from China, but you should never, ever, 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 ever make your own vaccine card. That would be wrong. And you should never alter the CDC logo just enough to bypass felony use of government insignia. You should never do that either. From Caitlin O'Kane. U.S. Customs and Border Protection seized fake vaccine cards shipped from China to Tennessee last week. The shipment was disguised as paper greeting cards, and upon reading the description in the shipment manifest, Customs and Border Patrol officers already knew what it was, the agency said in a statement. The shipment was en route to Central Business District of New Orleans, but was intercepted at the port of Memphis. The agency said it was the 15th such shipment that night, and inside were 51 low-quality, counterfeit COVID-19 vaccine cards. The cards look like real vaccine verification cards with blanks for name, birth date, vaccine brand, and other information, as well as the CDC prevention logo. However, the cards had typos, unfinished words, and some Spanish words that were misspelled, the agency said, and I guarantee you that no bouncer was looking that fucking close at them. But I would have also modified the logo. Except that's only in a video game, and you should never ever modify a government logo to get by a felony conviction. And you should never, ever, ever have a fake vaccine card. Ever. You should never do that. The officers also knew the shipment was counterfeit because it was imported by a non-CDC or medical entity. This was not the first time they'd seen the shipper, the agency said. Such shipments are described as paper greeting cards, used for greeting card, or paper card, and they are always from China. China. They're always from China. China is the worst. But no, you should never, ever, 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 ever have a fake vaccine card. All right, from Fox News, Ayanna Pressley. Cancel rent advocate discloses thousands of dollars in rental income. From Peter Hassan. Massachusetts Rep. Ayanna Pressley's annual financial disclosure shows she and her husband made thousands of dollars a year in rental income last year. Well, it's Massachusetts. That's one property. That's $7,000 a fucking month. Pressley has been one of the most prominent advocates for canceling rent during the COVID-19 pandemic. We must cancel rent, extend eviction and foreclosure moratoriums, provide rental assistance, and offer legal representation for those at risk of eviction, Pressley, a member of the far-left squad, wrote in a December 2020 tweet. She introduced a bill in March 2021 that, if passed, would have canceled rent and mortgage payments nationwide. With the economic impact of this pandemic worsening and the threat of eviction and homelessness looming large for families nationwide, we must take every measure possible to keep families safely housed, forgive all rental debt, and ensure that the credit scores of hard-hit families are not forever tarnished, Presley said at the time. The bill would have required the federal government to reimburse landlords for any rent not paid during the pandemic. Presley's 2020 financial disclosure filed on Friday disclosed between $5,000 and $15,000 in rental income from a Boston property in her husband's name. The property was converted into a multifamily apartment after it was purchased, according to Presley's disclosure. Okay, that's 1 month of rent, though. Presley's office did not immediately return Fox News' request for comment on whether she and her husband had canceled rent for their tenants at any point in 2020. She disclosed the same range of rental income between $5,000 and $15,000 in 2020 as she did in 2019 before the pandemic began. Cancel all rent, according to Ayanna Presley. All right, let's grab one here from NPR, National Progressive Radio. And make sure that you donate your money to National Progressive Radio, or they will remind you again halfway through the article. But the big red donate button, it's not your money, comrade, it's our money. Families who receive food stamps will see the largest benefits increase in history. This comes to National Progressive Radio from the Dissociated Press. So let's see what it is that they have to say here. The Biden admin has approved significant and permanent increases in the levels of food stamp assistance to needy families, the largest single increase in the program's history. Starting in October, average benefits for food stamps, officially known as SNAP program, will rise more than 25% above pre-pandemic levels. The increased assistance will be available indefinitely to all 42 million SNAP beneficiaries. The aid boost was first reported by the New York Times, a former newspaper, and the details were confirmed by a spokeswoman for the Agricultural Department. They will be formally announced Monday by Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack. The aid boost is being packaged as a major revision of USDA's Thrifty Food Plan. In concrete terms, the average monthly per-person benefit will rise from $121 to $157. The increase is part of the multi-pronged Biden admin's effort to strengthen the country's social safety net. Poverty and food security activists maintain that long-standing inadequacies in the safety net were laid bare by the COVID-19 pandemic, presenting an opportunity to make generational improvements that reach beyond the current public health crisis. Also, the fact that we've had 5% plus inflation month over month, year over year for 3 months. But let's not talk about that. All right, and I got a pair from The Hill and a pair from Twitter, and then we will do Twitter trending and head out of here for the day. We're almost done, guys. From The Hill, Changing America, scientists discover Stonehenge is constructed from a nearly indestructible material. From Joseph Guzman. New research is shedding light on how the Stonehenge monument in southern England has remained standing since it was erected roughly 5,000 years ago. Researchers from the University of Brighton conducted the first comprehensive analysis of samples taken directly from one of Stonehenge's megaliths to reveal the geological and chemical structure of the stone. During a restoration program at Stonehenge in the 50s, a stonecutter named Robert Phillips managed to retrieve a cylindrical core sample of one of the stones measuring about 3 feet long. Phillips brought the souvenir back with him to the U.S. and was in possession of it for several decades, until he provided material for research in 2018, just a few years before he passed in 2020. It is extremely rare as a scientist you get the chance to work on samples of such national and international importance, Professor David Nash, co-author of the study, said in a statement. Stonehenge is part of the World Heritage Site and is subject to the strictest legal protections, so it would be highly unlikely he would be able to access this type of material today. Getting access to the core drilled from Stone 58 was very much the holy grail for our research, Nash said. The core didn't disappoint. Researchers used CT scanning, X-rays, microscopic analysis, and other techniques, and discovered that the sarsens, the massive boulders that make up the monument, are composed of sand-sized quartz grains that are cemented tightly together by an interlocking mosaic of quartz crystals. Researchers said that this is what makes the stone so impervious to crumbling or erosion. This small sample is probably the most analyzed piece of stone other than moon rock, Nash said. The findings were published in PLOS One. So not only is this one of the strangest and most unexplained phenomena of the world, it's indestructible, nearly. But as they always say, if you make your mark on the world, make your mark on the world so completely that people are forced to believe it was aliens that built it for you. All right. Let's talk about some crazy people. Eric Fiegel Ding says, sobbing teacher, we're trying to protect our students from mass shooting that we know is coming and we cannot do anything about it. Let's listen to what she has to say.
I have had my regular back to school anxieties, things like, am I going to have enough time? Am I going to get my lessons done? Are the students going to be okay? But this year, there is this overshadowing apprehension that's clouding my normal back to school thoughts. And it's with thoughts like, if I die, who's going to take care of my children? And if I end up in the hospital, how am I going to pay those bills? And if I give COVID to my students or my own children and they die, how am I going to live with that? And I want you to ask any teacher how they feel this year, and I'm sure that they will tell you that they have never experienced anxiety like this, because it is like we are trying to protect our students from a mass shooting that we know is coming but cannot do anything about. Except we can do something about it. It's just that not everyone agrees that wearing a mask will stop the onslaught of students and staff who are likely to become sick, and that makes me sick. And in the meetings that I have been to since we've been back, I hear teachers planning like regular, but I also hear them having conversations about finding affordable attorneys so that they can make a will. And we're talking about making emergency sub-plans and quarantining and going to the hospital. And after, in my district, we found out that we have to use personal and sick days if we have to quarantine and that those aren't paid. The constant dialogue is how those bills are going to get paid. And we're wondering what legal rights we have, because we don't have mask mandates in place across the board. And across the board, we're worried. And we're tired of fighting parents who feel like mask mandates violate rights. We want parents to know that we are on the same team.
Wow. Tell me you're unhinged in one TikTok. And I mean, this woman, I'm sorry, is completely unhinged at this point. First and foremost, if you are over the age of 22, you should have a will. Just in case. And it's not necessarily going to be that you're going to get COVID and die, or you're going to go out and get shot in a school shooting and die. It's you're walking across the street from your favorite bar, and somebody does something fucking stupid and doesn't see you. And you're impaled in the grill of a Buick. Yes, it's a morbid reality, but you should already have one by the time you've gone into teaching, just in case. But also, well, we're trying to make an emergency sub-plan, or we're trying to do... It's the same thing. You should always have this plan in place already. And you've got the school district out there should be making plans for this as well. It's sounding to me like you just want to live your life carefree and not ever plan for anything. instead of always having a backup plan just in case. You should always have a backup plan. There's no reason to not have a backup plan at this point. But that's what these people are. And this isn't even the most unhinged one here. I got another TikTok. I have another teacher here that I thought that you guys would enjoy here. Libs of TikTok puts out, these are the people you entrust your 2-year-old with. Let's listen to what she had to say.
Story time. This has been my first year in preschool with a class of my own, teaching alongside another queer neurodivergent educator, and we have been rocking our twos class. We've been talking about gender and skin color and consent and empathy and our bodies and autonomy. It's been fabulous. But our teaching team is shifting and a new person is being onboarded, someone with many years of experience. So today at the lunch table, when the topic of gender and genitals came up, one of our students plainly looked up and said, "Well, I'm a girl today, but I know that teacher Co isn't. No, they're NB." And the look on the incoming teacher's face was priceless. She was shocked in a good way, and she just looked around at the two of us and said, "This class is incredible, and I am so impressed."
Yeah, these are the caption is perfect. These are the people you entrust your 2-year-old with. I'm NB. I like that picture too, by the way. Haha. Homeschool your kids, folks. Because this is what's getting through the school system, to go and teach your kids. All right, last one, then we will do Twitter trending for the day. Changing America. Off the hill once again. Human-sized tuna caught and it weighs 620 pounds. Okay, only in Wisconsin is 620 pounds human-sized. Just so you know. From Christian Spencer. A Quebec woman's fishery caught a tuna so big it could have been mistaken for a shack. The human-sized tuna was caught by Pêcheries des Bois, a fishery based in Chemin, St. Louis, Quebec, MTL blog reported. The fish, which was the fisheries director, General Miriam Cyr Desbois, identified as a bluefin, weighed about 620 pounds, but the species can grow as big as 10 feet long and about 1,600 pounds, according to Fisheries and Oceans Canada. Desbois told MTL blog that she has caught a fish weighing more than 850 pounds on previous trips. It was this big! The company said the value of the catch is estimated between $7,000 and $8,000. Desbois told the MTL blog that the fish was available for purchase at two of her store's locations, Pêcheries des Bois in Quebec City and Pêcheries Bertrand des Bois in Matane as of Friday, August 13th. So, if you want some bluefin, well, I guess you can't go get it because the border is closed, but that'll be the place to get it. That one's not going to wind up in the chicken of the sea can, unfortunately. But yeah, that's quite the fish. It's human-sized at 650 pounds. That only in Wisconsin is that human-sized. All right, and with that, we will end out the day talking about our Twitter trending. So let's get the Explore page up here, and let's see what's going on with this. All right, so starting off here, we will go into trending, and we will start here. Apparently, number one trend today is Black Cat Appreciation Day. A day to make black cats feel like the luckiest pets in the world and banish any bad omens about these adorable furballs. Ow. Ow. Yeah, I'm looking at you. It's Black Cat Appreciation Day, so you damn well better appreciate me. How to bathe a dragon. I'm just really not a cat person. That's the long and short of it. I'm just really not a cat person. I don't care what color the cat is. I don't care to be around cats. I think they're kind of assholes, and I don't want an animal that shits in my house. So that'll be the number one trend of the day. Tim Tebow is number 2. The Jacksonville Jaguars released Tim Tebow after pursuing an NFL comeback at tight end. Tim Tebow, thankful for the highs and the lows, the opportunities and the setbacks. I've never wanted to make decisions out of fear of failure, and I'm grateful for the chance to have pursued a dream. What a roller coaster this dude's been on. Because he was the praying quarterback at first, and then he decided he wanted to go play baseball. And now he wants to go play football again as tight end and not a quarterback anymore. And now he's a free agent. I mean, he's a good guy. He really is. And Nick Adams says Tim Tebow is a class act and a real great Christian. But just the drama and the roller coaster that has gone over this guy since he first threw a football in the NFL. I don't know. It's weird. And he didn't really have, as far as I remember, that good of a career either. It was more the mockery of his religious beliefs than anything else. All right, number 3. We will skip the Tuesday motivations. We'll move on to Star Wars Visions. First look at Star Wars Visions, a new series featuring stories from 7 visionary Japanese anime studios, streaming September 22nd on Disney+. So this is going to be in, looks like the similar vein of the Animatrix, where they came out and I think the Animatrix was 10 stories, but they're making 7 short films and they're putting it together in one package. And they're made by various Japanese animators, just like the Animatrix was. So yeah, we'll have some additional stories. I don't know what Disney will consider to be canon and what they won't off of this, but I mean, they've signed off on everything here. So this will come to a Disney Plus near you next month. The next one, National Nonprofit Day. What are we on, 3 or 4? This will be 4th one. National Nonprofit Day. Annually on August 17th, nonprofit organizations are recognized and celebrated for their positive impact on society. Well, then I will take a second and recognize the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and thank them for allowing me to participate with them for 24 hours on live stream to earn them $1,800. Thank you, American Foundation Society and Gina Cardano, for coming and helping us out. RNLI says 365 days a year, come rain or shine. We're ready to save lives at sea, but a charity. We couldn't do it without our amazing volunteers, fundraisers, and supporters on National Nonprofit Day. Why not join our crew by becoming a member today and then the link for it. Thank you. The Great Cardone Foundation wanted to help young adults who had similar obstacles become successful. Mount Vernon Ladies Association, a private nonprofit that does not accept government funding. I don't know what they do. Dianetics, support of many local nonprofits. Community Arts Center of Cambria County, another one. And we'll get one more on here. Thanks to those dedicated volunteers who work alongside the NPKUA to improve the lives of individuals with PKU and pursue a cure. So if you have a favorite nonprofit, throw them a couple bucks today. I think that would be a good thing for it. I think it'd be a good thing for a lot of us. I will probably throw a couple bucks at Foundation for Suicide Prevention today. All right, and the last one, we will skip Tuesday Feeling, and our last one will be Vegeta. If a new Dragon Ball rumor is true, then Vegeta's new form has finally found an official name. Let's look at this here. Vegeta, every time he reads his script, Vegeta gets a new form. Vegeta fans, finally, it's Vegeta's time. Bruh, I wake up to Vegeta losing again. I can't keep doing this, man. My guy Vegeta can never catch a break. But no matter what, once he gets to his next form, once again, and we will look at this just briefly, Dragon Ball Super is one of the most buzzed about manga these days, and it's drumming up lots of talk thanks to Vegeta. As the series explores this new arc, the prideful Saiyan is taking on his next one-on-one match with the strongest fighter in the universe, Seven. And if a new rumor is true, the hero's new form might have found a name. See, his newest form might have found a name at this point. But what I need to know before we head out of here is this even his final form? You haven't even seen my final form! Alright, that's enough. Let's get out of here for the day. Music! Music, 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 music. Oh, that's loud. Alright, so thanks everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. Thanks again to Jessica Green last night for coming and helping out on the Red Net show last night, in spite of the fact that her back was hurting. She still powered through, and we got almost the full show back out of her as well. So thank you for that. And we will be back here tomorrow for more contemporary. We'll be talking about something I'm thankful for. Excuse me. Whatever else comes up in the news. Sorry about that. But we will see you tomorrow for more of that and see what's going on in the news and what's happening with Afghanistan. There's Arizona audit and everything else here. So until then, we will see you tomorrow. Until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. We'll see you over on Steven's chat. Take care.